The year is 1945. In the immediate aftermath after World War II, Europe, along with most of the world, was left in complete disarray. Economies shattered and cities were reduced to rubble. After 6 long years at war, the major powers of Europe were left to pick up the pieces of a shattered and fractured world. Meanwhile, the United States emerged victorious, having been instrumental in the defeat of the Axis powers. They were left relatively unharmed and its mainland untouched by war and its industries booming. During the war, the United States went full throttle, igniting its full industrial might and focusing on the defeat of the Germans in the West and the Japanese in the Far East. You see, for the decade before entering World War II, the US was experiencing its most crippling economic catastrophe, the Great Depression, during which the US was brought to its knees economically with no clear end in sight. However, upon entering the war, the US turned into a wartime economy, selling weapons and munitions to the Allies in defense against the Axis powers. These elements propelled the US out of a Great Depression, and in winning the war, and propelled them further into one of the lone global superpowers on the planet. This transition set the stage for America to pivot from a wartime economy to a peacetime juggernaut, steering the course of global politics for decades to come. However, with great power comes great responsibility. Now having a fully mobilized fighting force deployed across the globe, the US needed resources to sustain its status as the defenders of liberty. The Cold War had begun, and the Red Army was positioned to challenge the US ideologically and economically as a global superpower. It was at this point that the US used its position as the leader of the free world to form alliances with those who controlled the world's most vital natural resource, the Saudis. And in doing so, the US would forever tie its fate to the almighty black gold, doing whatever it took to maintain its status as the economic superpower of the world and solidifying the US dollar as the world's reserve currency. And as a result, giving birth to the petrodollar, a currency backed not by gold, but by oil, paid for in blood. My name's Mark, and welcome to my channel. I make deep dives into the world of money, power, and business, empowering you, my cherished viewer, with all the tools you need to take control of your future. Be sure to hit the like button and subscribe, as it helps promote my content to the YouTube algorithm. Now tap in, and I'll explain. Following World War II, the United States stood alone among industrialized nations. Its cities were untouched by bombs, and its factories were humming with activity. Unlike most of Europe, which still lay in ruins, America had transformed its industrial base to meet its wartime demands, in achieving unprecedented levels of production. This not only ensured rapid military success, but it also positioned the US as the undisputed leader in global manufacturing by the war's end. In 1948, recognizing both a moral duty and a strategic opportunity, the US government initiated the Marshall Plan, named after the then Secretary of State, George C. Marshall. You see, this bold initiative proposed to rebuild war-torn Europe, pledging over $12 billion, close to $130 billion in today's dollars, in economic aid. The war plan was deep, not only aimed to restore Europe's devastated infrastructure, but also to rejuvenate its economies to stave off the threat of communist expansion, which was taking root amidst the post-war chaos. However, the Marshall Plan also served a less altruistic purpose. It opened the European markets to American products. European recovery was vital for the US for two main reasons. Economically, Europe needed to be a viable trading partner, and politically, it needed to be stable enough to resist communism. By pumping vast sums into European reconstruction, the US was effectively ensuring that European countries would have the means to purchase American goods, as well, ranging from automobiles to appliances, cementing the US's position at the center of a new economic order. But the US isn't in the business of doing charity work. The aid was not given as a blank check. It came in the form of grants for American goods, thus directly benefiting US industries. American companies found their markets for their new products and their new expansion opportunities. Industries such as steel, automotive, technology, and of course, oil, all of which saw significant growth during this period. Moreover, the plan helped standardize business practices and regulatory frameworks across Europe in ways that favored American economic interests. As a result, the Marshall Plan not only catalyzed the recovery and economic integration of Western Europe, but also secured the US's dominance in the global economy. It laid the groundwork for institutions like the World Bank and the International Monetary Fund, and set the stage for the American century, where the US would wield tremendous influence, not just through its military might, but through its economic power, reshaping international relations forever. The geopolitical chessboard of the Middle East became a focal point for American foreign policy in the aftermath of World War II. As Europe lay in ruins and the Soviet threat loomed large, securing stable and abundant energy sources became a paramount concern for the United States. The Middle East, with its vast reserves of oil, quickly emerged as a region of strategic importance. This pursuit led to a landmark moment in 1945 when President Franklin D. Roosevelt met with the King of Saudi Arabia, Ibn Saud, aboard the USS Quincy. This meeting was more than a diplomatic gesture. It was the cornerstone of a burgeoning alliance. Roosevelt and the then President of Saudi Arabia forged an agreement that would shape the future of the region and its military protection for Saudi Arabia in exchange for secure and preferential access to Saudi oil. This arrangement not only assured America's energy security, but also marked the beginning of extensive U.S. involvement in Middle Eastern politics. Over the following decades, the U.S.-Saudi relationship only deepened. Its infrastructure projects, military training programs, and direct investments flowed from the United States into Saudi Arabia, cementing the kingdom's role as a crucial ally. In return, the U.S. received not just oil, but also significant influence over the global oil market, helping to stabilize supply and control prices. Further east, in Iran, American interests were challenged in the early 1950s when the Prime Minister of Iran nationalized the Iranian oil industry, previously controlled by the British and American companies. Viewing the nationalization as a threat to Western oil interests and an oil boom for Soviet influence, the CIA orchestrated a coup in 1953, codenamed Operation Ajax. The covert operation led to the overthrow of the King of Iran and the reinstatement of the Shah Mohammad Reza Pahlavi. The move was designed to ensure continued Western access to Iranian oil and to fortify a regime friendly to U.S. interests. The 1953 coup highlighted the lengths to which the United States would go to secure its energy supply routes and maintain its influence over oil-rich regions. It set a precedent for future American interventions in the Middle East, where strategic interests often intertwine tightly with economic ones, particularly those linked to oil. These actions underscored a pragmatic, if morally complex, aspect of American foreign policy that prioritized resource security over other considerations, including the promotion of democratic values and human rights. In the volatile wake of the 1973 oil crisis, caused by an OPEC oil embargo that starkly highlighted the West's vulnerability to Middle Eastern oil policies, the United States moved decisively to secure its economic and energy interests. The solution, crafted in 1974, came through a pivotal agreement with Saudi Arabia, the linchpin of OPEC, and the world's largest oil exporter. This agreement, forged during a series of meetings between the U.S. Secretary of State Henry Kissinger and Saudi leadership, marked a strategic shift. It stipulated that Saudi Arabia and, subsequently, other OPEC nations would price their oil exclusively in U.S. dollars. In return, the United States offered weapons, military training and security in a stalwart political alliance. This arrangement, often referred to as the petrodollar system, had profound implications. By denominating oil sales in dollars, it ensured that global trade would essentially underwrite the demand for U.S. dollars. Countries around the world now needed substantial reserves of dollars to pay for their oil imports, fostering a universal dependency on the U.S. currency that extended beyond oil importing nations to the entire spectrum of global trade. It offered the U.S. unique advantages, notably the ability to print money without the usual inflationary consequences, since global demand for the dollar kept its value high. This exorbitant privilege enabled expansive U.S. fiscal policies and contributed significantly to the country's global economic influence. Moreover, the petrodollar system linked the economic fates of oil exporting countries closely to the health of the U.S. economy and the stability of its currency. It also gave the U.S. considerable leverage over international financial institutions such as the World Bank and the International Monetary Fund. The repercussions of this system were intense and not without controversy. While it would provide economic stability and underpin decades of global economic growth, it had also been critiqued for perpetuating imbalances in the global financial system, encouraging high levels of U.S. national debt, fostering economic conditions that can lead to significant global imbalances. By effectively weaponizing the U.S. dollar through its indispensable role in global oil trade, America secured a strategic economic tool that has been as influential as any military force in shaping the post-war world order. The strategic imperatives driving America's pursuit of oil have cast long shadows over its foreign and domestic policies. In the Middle East, the U.S.'s commitment to securing oil resources often translated into support for authoritarian regimes whose stability was deemed essential to maintaining the flow of oil. This support was frequently at odds with the promotion of democratic values, leading to a paradoxical policy where strategic interests overruled moral values. Over the decades, U.S. backing helped entrench regimes in Saudi Arabia, Iran, and the Shah, and Iraq under Saddam Hussein before he invaded Kuwait in 1990. Such alliances were important, but not without costs. They often proved that the U.S., with reliable access to oil but at the expense of fostering environments where political oppression and lack of democratic reforms were overlooked or indirectly supported. This approach has been a contributing factor to the long-term political instability in the Middle East. As the regime suppressed dissent and curtailed political freedoms, they also inadvertently set the stage for extremist ideologies. And these took root among the populations that were disenfranchised by their own governments. Domestically, the U.S.'s dependence on Middle Eastern oil has repeatedly thrust the nation into economic uncertainty. The 1973 oil embargo and the subsequent embargo in 1979 energy crisis are prime examples of how sudden disruptions in oil supply can lead to widespread economic turmoil, investing everything from inflation rates to unemployment. These crises also underscored the values inherent with the U.S.'s oil dependency, prompting shifts in energy policies and fueling debates that have reached as high as presidential elections. Moreover, the military dimensions of securing oil supply routes have become significant. The U.S. has found itself militarily involved in the Persian Gulf on several occasions, most notably during the Gulf War and the Iraq War. These conflicts were driven by the need to ensure access to oil and demonstrate to global partners that the U.S. would militarily back its oil supply security promises. The intertwining of U.S. foreign policy with oil interests has also contributed to widespread anti-American sentiments across the globe, in regions where the U.S. has intervened directly or supported repressive governments. These policies have often been viewed as imperialistic or self-serving, particularly by those who suffer the consequences of such governance. This resentment has been a factor in the radicalization of individuals and groups who oppose not only their own governments, but also the foreign power that supports them. As the world grapples with the realities of climate change and the surge in renewable energy technologies, the historical reliance on oil casts a long shadow. The legacy of the American oil rush has not only shaped international policies and economic policies, but also set the stage for today's energy challenges. Reflecting on this past, we must question the true cost of power and prosperity, driven by an insatiable thirst for oil as we chart a path toward a more sustainable future. If you enjoyed this video, please be sure to hit the like button and subscribe, as doing so helps push my content through the YouTube algorithm. And as always, I've been Mark, you've been great, stay dangerous, and I'll see you in the next one.